The biggest mistake I made during my first architect certification was to just rely on my few years of hands-on experience and then just go ahead and take the exam without any study plan. I failed my first attempt even after having 2 years of hands-on experience back then. So this was back in 2015, but this still applies to many of us. So do watch this video till end, and I'm confident this will clarify many of your questions about the exam. Now, if this is your first attempt in AWS certification, you might be thinking about the foundational level certifications such as Cloud Practitioner. And I personally feel that level is a bit optional for engineers. It's mostly geared towards someone from sales or legal or marketing. But if you're still not sure, you can check out my video on practitioner certification above, somewhere here, and the link is in the description. Coming back to the question, why get certified? For someone who has so many years of experience, to me, it's about validating my existing AWS knowledge, challenging myself, and at the same time, enhancing my resume. So if you're new to AWS certification, regardless of your hands-on experience, my advice is that you aim towards one of the associate level certification before you move towards professional or specialty exams. Now, this actually used to be a prerequisite, but AWS removed it back in 2018. So right now, you can start with any certification you like. But again, I won't suggest taking shortcut to professional. And if you're thinking to go for developer, first, I suggest you consider going for architect. Not only this has higher value, but developer preparation would be a cakewalk once you pass architect, trust me. So in my case, after I failed in my first attempt, I spent about 3 weeks to pass the architect exam, 1 week to pass the developer, 2 weeks to pass the DevOps, and 2 weeks to pass my professional comfortably. So overall, in like 7 weeks, I passed all these 4 certifications. And I say it comfortably because I didn't give any breaks in my studies patterns. It's not that I used to study for hours and hours. I spent about 2 to 3 hours every day. I made sure that I don't have any breaks. I made sure that I study even on Sundays and Saturdays. And if I am, for whatever reason, if I can't make it to one day, I made sure that I compensate for that day the next day. The maximum gap I'll have during my study plan was for maybe for 2 days. Because at least for me, it breaks the momentum. Once I was able to make myself consistent with my study routines and followed the process, it was pretty comfortable for me to pass the exam. If there is one cloud certification that will give you solid foundational knowledge, it is AWS Solution Architect. And this is regardless of your level of experience. This is perhaps the most popular certification in associate level exam. And again, I highly recommend to go for this before you even attempt AWS Professional. No certification guarantees a job. Your hiring manager will always look out for your work experience. However, recruiters can filter on that experience, helping your resume to stand out. It both signals to the recruiter and your hiring manager that this person is serious about AWS. On the other hand, if you are in consulting with big companies such as Deloitte and others, they love certifications. A lot of these consulting companies have partnership with AWS, and having more people with certification is definitely going to help them build on that partnership. In the AWS certification site for Solution Architect Associate, you'll find the exam overview on your right. It's a 130 minutes exam, has 65 questions, will cost you about $150. I do not suggest spending $20 here for the practice questions. You can take this exam in testing center or opt for taking from home, which is an online proctored exam. Now, since the knowledge and skills tested on these exams are vastly different, the passing raw scores are different. For the associate level exam, the passing score is 720. And it's valid for 3 years. Do check out the link in the description if you want to understand how AWS scoring works for different exams. To pass the exam, you need hands-on experience using compute, networking, storage management, and database AWS services. You should be also able to identify and define technical requirements for any solution that involves AWS technology. You should be able to identify which AWS services meet a given technical requirement. Understand the best practices for well-architected solution. Have a good understanding of AWS global infrastructure and security services. The exam comes in 2 different forms of questions. Multiple choice, which has 1 correct response and 3 incorrect responses, and multiple response, which has two or more correct responses out of five or more response options. And this is pretty much same across all the certification AWS has. The important thing to note here is unanswered questions are always scored as incorrect, and there is no penalty for guessing. The exam is divided into four test domains. The main focus here is on resiliency, performance, and security. That doesn't mean you skip the billing questions because they are fairly easy compared to other domains. So don't skip that section either. Now, finally, in the appendix section, you'll find all the tools, technology, and AWS services you need to know for the exam. There are a lot of popular courses you'll find online. However, for the exam, I would suggest to stick to one instead of jumping from one course to other. Just try to finish the same course twice, maybe at 1.5x speed when you do the second time. The three main courses I find online, which are currently popular, is a Cloud Guru, a Dolphin 80, and Udemy courses on Solution Architect Associate. I have heard a lot of good reviews on Dolphin 80. Their main instructor is Isa. In fact, while preparing for my AWS professional certification, I found him to be the best. Now, as you can see, it's a subscription based service, which means you don't get to buy just the course but need to subscribe for them. However, out of other courses, I found it to be the cheapest. It's about $23 per month. The other option you have is to go for a Cloud Guru. They are also subscription based service, a bit expensive than Dolphin 80. At the same time, they have tons of other AWS things going on. In fact, when I was giving my associate exam, I learned everything from a Cloud Guru. However, in that case, it was a $10 Udemy course, which is no longer available. And they are pretty much subscription based as far as I know. Last but not the least, the Udemy course from Stephen Marin is equally popular among a lot of students. Now, the course fee might look pretty high for $84.99, but I'm sure with some digging, you can get some cool coupons on Udemy and use them. I've seen courses dropping by more than 50% of their initial price. Each of the courses, as far as I know, they come with practice set exams, but you need to supplement with additional exams. One of them is WizLabs. WizLabs has been there for a while. They have about 400 practice questions with them, and their pricing is very competitive. It's about $10. However, at the time I gave that exam, it was about few years back. I had quality concerns with their questions, and not just me. There were a lot of people complaining about it. They might have got better. Or you can go for Udemy Solution Architect Associate Practice exams coming for $13, and I've been told it is up to date. The pricing again may vary depending upon Udemy promotions and coupons. And finally, I have been given a strong positive review on BrainCert courses certification questions. Especially, there is a high chance for the same question in BrainCert to appear in your AWS certification exam. Your plan should be simple. Just go with one course, be it a Cloud Guru, Dolphin 80, or the Udemy course. And at the same time, supplement it with practice questions either from WizLab, Udemy, or BrainCert. All the links are in description for you to choose. AWS Well-Architected Framework. Now, this used to be a white paper, but it's being currently archived. However, you need to understand that this framework is built on five pillars: the operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, and cost optimization. And you'll expect questions from each of these pillars. So make sure you have a good understanding of what do this stand for. And like I said, if you go down and click on these PDFs, these are all currently being archived, and you can even get PDFs for the white papers for each of these pillars, which are also archived, and you don't have to go through them anymore. Now, few years back, AWS also introduced this tool, Well-Architected Tool, And basically, using this tool, you can get your architecture reviewed by AWS. What I mean by this is, so let's click on this tool and let's get started. This tool itself is, by the way, a service. What you can do here is you can define a workload. So let me give a unique identifier, maybe a YouTube demo for YouTube, review on a name. I'm gonna give a junk email here. Um, let's say we go for production environment. Choose your AWS region. I'm gonna go with US East. Your account ID is optional. You don't have to give a link to your architecture design, but you can. And yeah, let's go next. Now, what I want here to do is apply AWS Well-Architected framework lens. Don't really worry about all the other lenses in exam's point of view. Um, so just choose this and you define your workload. Now, what you see here is it's gonna print up a report for you showing you what are the high risk and medium risk. But that happens once you answer all the questions. Let's click on start reviewing. And here you are presented with all sorts of questions for each of the domains, right? So for example, for operational excellence, they need to know what are the things that apply to you. So for example, this could be evaluated for external customer needs only, or maybe you have an architecture diagram which deals with both external and internal customer needs and few other things here. So let's click on next and so on and so forth, right? So for example, with security as well, you have all the security related questions for your architecture. And similarly for reliability, performance efficiency, and cost optimization. So once you are done with all the questions and click on next, um, and when you save and exit, it's gonna give you a report of what are the risks with your framework. If there is one white paper you cannot skip for the exam, that is disaster recovery, AWS white paper. Now, disaster recovery is one of the important aspect of resiliency in AWS. And resiliency is one of the core domains we discussed in the study guide. Resiliency can be in form of disaster recovery, and availability is another aspect of resiliency. However, they both are two different terms altogether. You should also know shared responsibility model for resiliency in AWS. AWS is responsible for resiliency of the infrastructure that runs all the services offered in the AWS cloud. However, you as a customer of AWS are responsible for determining the AWS cloud services that you select. So for example, let's say you select an EC2 instance and run your application. Now that's not going to guarantee resiliency. What if the EC2 instance fails, right? You don't have any other EC2 instance to fail over. You don't have a load balancer setup. And basically, it's a single point of failure kind of design which you have made. And that is what this is pointing to, right? So you are equally responsible for resiliency. And you can go through this document again to ensure that as an architect, what are you exactly responsible for and what is AWS? And do expect a question or two from here. BCP is something done by large enterprises. And if you are really invested in cloud, you would definitely like to do a impact analysis and risk assessment, and which is what is part of your BCP. You also need to know what are your RTOs and RPOs. In short, RPO is the maximum amount of data loss your company or your application can afford. And RTO is the maximum downtime your application can afford. So, for example, in one of the enterprises I was working on, they rated one application as gold standard, one as platinum, one as silver, meaning how important is the application. So, let's say an application is the bread and butter for the company, maybe a payment system, right? You don't want it to go down. And if it goes down, you want very short RTO and very short amount of data loss. And that is when your solution architecture design comes in. And hence, these numbers basically dictate um, how much valuable the application is. Disaster recovery is definitely much different in cloud than you do in on-prem, especially because the way cloud is designed, right? So you have the concept of global cloud infrastructure, which you don't find in on-prem. You have the concept of regions, availability zones, which all help in your DR plan. And finally, there are multiple options of disaster recovery. Based upon how important your application is, you can choose one of the options here. And I would heavily insist you to go through each of the architecture options. You can definitely expect a question or two from one of the architecture options here, and it's not much. Once you're aware of what are the individual services, it's really easy to understand what is going on. And then things you need to understand is how to detect there has been a disaster. So, and there are multiple ways to detect failures. One of the most common ways I know of is to implement automated failovers based on health checks, right? So, you design your health checks based upon your user experience and your KPI. It is always a good idea to have a way to test disaster recovery and make sure that, for especially for your important applications and projects, you meet the RTOs and RPOs, right? If it is a heavily used application, really important one, then make sure you run those tests to ensure that in case of a disaster, your RPOs and RTOs are met. Unless you are in a rush, I would say give it about 6 weeks at least to make sure you are 100% confident in passing the exam. For first 3 weeks, you complete your courses. In the next week, you start with all the practice questions. Not just the one from the course, but also the one you have purchased to supplement your course practice questions. In the following week, revise the course again, maybe at 1.5x speed. At the same time, continue with your practice questions. And in the last week, you continue with all your practice questions. As you're going through the practice questions and the course, it's very important that you make sure you're noting down all your mistakes. AWS is composed of many services, but if there is one service for which you need hands on, it is to create VPC from scratch. Now, there are many descriptive blogs and YouTube videos that explain how to configure VPC from scratch, and you, my friend, should actually be doing it. This may be a totally different experience than watching the video and just going skimming through the section. And once you do it, I bet this could be the most fulfilling part of your course. Most questions are scenario based. So, first, rule out the answers you know for sure are wrong. There are very few trick questions, so please don't even overthink. Especially if an answer seems complicated, that's most likely a wrong answer. One of the things you can consider is exploring and visualizing the most important architectural patterns. And this is something not many are aware of. It is in fact available on AWS site free of cost. Links are in description. If you're not sure of the correct answer, you can use the flag feature in the exam certification and visit it later after solving all other questions. But don't leave any questions. Do attempt all of them. As we know, there is no negative marking. If you are a non native English speaker, don't forget to request ESL accommodation, which gives you additional 30 minutes. For example, I'm from India, and Indians can be considered non native speakers of English because many states in India still teach English as their second language. Skim through all the white papers we discussed earlier and FAQs of some of the most important services. Again, all the links are in description. And finally, if you're taking the AWS online exam for the first time, try to join at least 30 minutes before the actual time just to make sure your connectivity and everything is fine, your environment is looking good,